You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the director of the John Smith Centre, Kezia Dugdale, and barrister and former government minister, Soubry. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Escape from Khartoum is the headline on the front of the Metro, as the newspaper reports on diplomatic evacuations from Sudan. That story also features on the Telegraph, which says UK citizens feel abandoned by the Foreign Office. And the Express also leads on the evacuation from Sudan, detailing the dramatic rescue effort by SAS forces. The Eye says Diane Abbott's fighting for her political career after having the Labour whip suspended over her comments published in The Observer. The Times also leads on that story with the headline, Corbyn ally sparks new Labour row over racism. The Daily Mirror reports that Sir Rod Stewart is stepping up his calls for nurses to get a fair pay rise. Time to scrap the tourist tax and get Britain booming again is the headline on the front of the Daily Mail. While the Daily Star turns its attention to several upcoming heat waves in the UK, which are expected to start over the King's coronation. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Kezia Dugdale and Soubry. Welcome to you both. Let's start with the Metro and the very worrying story unfolding from Sudan, the fierce fighting that many British nationals and others have been caught up in. And their headline, Escape from Khartoum. Anna, take us into this story.
So we know that there is this very serious situation developing in Sudan, and the government, quite rightly and understandably, wants to get people, British nationals, and of course all the diplomatic team out of there as soon as possible. The criticism is that the government's slow, excuse me, and it's not in particular dealing with the British nationals. To be fair, I think what the Foreign Secretary was trying to say, James Cleverly, I don't think he said it very well, was that the priority had to be embassy staff to get them into a safe place so that they can continue their work, then to get those British nationals out. The front page of the Metro and others is referring to some remarkable operation led by the SAS. But of course, everybody's real fear is that we don't have a repetition of the outrage in Afghanistan when I'm afraid we absolutely failed to do the right thing by people and getting them out of there.
We've heard from some British nationals in Khartoum, in Sudan, Kezia, and they're saying that they feel abandoned.
Yes, right now it feels like they have every reason to feel that way, watching a flight leave with all the diplomatic support from the country that they are still living in. And Anna's right to point to the reminiscence it brings of what happened in Afghanistan with people queuing at the gates of the airport waiting for aircraft to arrive. We don't know just exactly how many British nationals there are in Sudan at the minute, and the government are asking people in the country to register a form on the internet to make themselves known. It seems quite a bit behind the efforts that other countries are making at this stage. A number of the papers point to a situation in Ireland where they seem to have a very specific number of citizens in the country and are communicating with them already and making plans to get them out. So a strong sense here that the UK government and the Foreign Secretary in particular are behind the curve when really rapid actions required, because the situation is escalating very, very quickly.
Let's move on to the Times, Anna, and this story that's emerged today involving Diane Abbott, who has lost the Labour whip over comments that she's made, suggesting that Jewish people can't suffer racism.
This is extraordinary. She wrote a letter that was in The Observer today, where she said that. Actually, she said it about the Roma people as well, and I think the Irish. And she said that the racism which undoubtedly these people have suffered for centuries, appalling racism, she likened it to the prejudices that people with ginger hair had suffered. and sought to draw a distinction between, again, the appalling racism suffered by black people. And it is just such a load of nonsense, and it's deeply offensive. But then she put out a statement completely retracting and apologising and saying, well, this was just a draft. And actually, I think all of this, it actually poses more questions. The fact that what she says in her retraction, because how can you write something and then say, oh, I didn't really mean to write all of that, it was just a draft. Well, how did it get sent? And actually, I believe in the exact opposite to what I wrote and sent to a newspaper. Anyway, Labour have suspended the whip. They've acted very quickly, quite rightly so. But it's going to be the fallout, because if she doesn't get the whip back, she can't stand as a Labour member of Parliament. So quite rightly, this is making a lot of news, and it's going to be interesting to see how things develop in the next week.
Kezia, what are your thoughts?
So Anna's right to say that Diane Abbott's remarks are offensive. They're also deeply regrettable and utterly avoidable. This is a proactive letter she wrote to the Observer. It didn't need to happen. It wasn't like she was involving herself in a spat or speaking from a panel at a particularly heated exchange. Not that that would justify the comments, but this was completely regrettable, unavoidable. And it's really quite shocking. And it's left Keir Starmer with no option other than to suspend her from the party, not least because he's put so much truck recently into trying to rebuild relationships with the Jewish community and has made a lot of headway in that regard. You have leading Jewish politicians like Luciana Berger, a former colleague of Anna's, rejoining the Labour Party because they believed that enough effort had been made, enough progress had been made to regain the support of the Jewish community. But all of that would be up in the air again if Labour hadn't acted as decisively as they had tonight. It's a very sad story, though, because Diane Abbott is a formidable politician. She's the first black female politician to be elected in the United Kingdom. And on many occasions, I've been on the wrong side of debates with her in the Labour Party, but she's somebody that broadly the Labour Party is extremely proud of. And she's now in a situation where the Labour Party, in the middle of selecting candidates for the next general election, she might find herself without the whip and unable to stand in her Hackney constituency, bringing her entire political career to an end because of an offensive, clumsy and utterly avoidable letter to the press.
And Anna, would you describe it as anti-Semitism? We went to Stamford Hill and spoke to some of her constituents, and a Jewish gentleman said that Diane Abbott had done a lot for the Jewish community, and she perhaps just misspoke.
No, I don't think she misspoke at all. She wrote this and she sent it. And I'm afraid it absolutely chimes with what a lot of Jewish people in particular have found under the reign of Corbyn, and just generally amongst, if you like, the hard left, is this trying to make out that this a terrible anti-Semitism, and what she said was just, I mean, it's wrong. It's just factually wrong, but it is profoundly offensive for Jewish people. 6 million were murdered in the gas chambers, for goodness sakes, and that was because of racism. I mean, to liken it to a prejudice for people with ginger hair, it's just extraordinary. But and from Diane Abbott, of all people, because of the appalling racism that she has suffered throughout the whole of her time in politics. But I think it is part of this feature. Kezia knows more about this than I do. This feature of the hard left in the Labour Party and their links with anti-Semitism. And you will remember that was a huge part of what finally led to the end of Jeremy Corbyn, and indeed his expulsion from the parliamentary party, and this determination by Starmer to stamp out this anti-Semitism in the Labour Party.
Yeah, so Jeremy Corbyn always denied claims of him being anti-Semitic. But Kezia, just to finish off on this subject, I wonder if you think this is the end of Diane Abbott's political career?
I'm afraid I do, and I really wish it wasn't, because in many ways I've got a huge amount of admiration for her. The thing that people forget about Diane Abbott, and Anna's pointed or referenced it a little bit there, is she's an extraordinary woman when it comes to firsts, and also she tracks an incredible amount of abuse online. There's a recent report showed that half of the entire abuse based on politicians online is directed at Diane Abbott, and yet she's managed to kind of force her way through that, get herself on the front foot, get up every day and do her job serving her constituents. And all of that is thrown away, I think, by this letter, which is so deeply offensive. But also, there was no choice for Sir Keir Starmer other than to suspend her. The timing is awful. It's very difficult to see if there's any route back for her now.
Anna, let's talk about the phone alert. I was going to say, which we all got today, but we all didn't get it today. And the headline for the Telegraph, phone alert test ends in fast. Did you get the alert?
No, I didn't get it. I feel completely left out. And no, I'm not on the Three network. I think it's because I don't have a mobile phone signal where I live. Like, actually, far too many across the whole of the United Kingdom. I mean, it is pitiful and outrageous that there are places where there is no mobile phone system. But I think I just assumed I'd get it because I use the Wi-Fi thing that means that you can use a mobile phone system. Don't ask me to explain it. Anyway, I didn't get it, but a lot of other people didn't get it either. And I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to do it all over again because there clearly is a problem with it. Looks like this one particular network. So,
are you worried that you didn't get it? That if it was for real, you'd be left out in the cold?
Well, I mean, I actually think it's a really good idea, this. And I think for flooding in particular, you know, I mean, I don't live in an area where we particularly suffer from floods, but that's really not the point, is it? Because lots of people who didn't get this will live in areas like that. So I don't have a problem with the principle of it all. But if you're going to do it, it's got to work.
Kezia, we read that it failed to work on up to 10 million phones. Hardly a success.
Well, that's obviously a huge number, given the number of people that live in the United Kingdom. I did get it, and I got an almighty fright, I must admit, even though knowing the test was trialled, was expected today. It came bang on 3 o'clock in my house. It set the dog off. Everybody was going daft for about 10 minutes. And then 10 minutes later, actually, my wife received the text message late, because that's the other part of the story. Lots of people didn't get it bang on cue, and the whole thing happened again. It's quite an important resource, I think, for the government to be able to do this. It does give you some degree of confidence that if something awful happened, there's a way to communicate with people. But 10 million of them not getting the messages, without doubt, something to be concerned about.
Yes, the government has insisted, though, that it was a success, but senior MPs suggest the scheme was a waste of taxpayers' money that should be scrapped. And Jacob Rees-Mogg is quoted here, former Cabinet Minister, said it was an expansion of the reach of the state. That was redundant. Thank you both. We shall speak to you in a moment. Just, I hope you can see Anna's expression there. We're going to take a break, Anna. Hold that thought. We'll be back. Coming up, should nurses wear body cameras? The Telegraph reports the government is considering the measure in a bid to reduce sexual assaults. Stay with us. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me once again, the director of the John Smith Centre, Kezia Dugdale, and barrister and former government minister, Anna Soubry. So let us take you through this section of the paper. So we're going to have a look at the Telegraph to start with. And this story, quite interesting story, that nurses are to be given body-worn cameras in an effort to curb hospital sexual assaults. Kezia.
Absolutely astonishing story. So since 2019, there have been 6,500 sexual assaults within hospital setting, which is outrageous when you think about it, but it's also obviously leading representatives of nurses and hospital staff to be asking for greater measures to protect them and the security while they're at their place of work. And that's led to these calls for nurses to wear body cams, much like paramedics or indeed police officers or other first responders do in unknown, difficult, dangerous situations. It's just quite astonishing, really, to think that something like that might be so necessary within hospitals where nurses are caring for very sick people who you would expect to be grateful for the help and support they're getting from nurses rather than actually be a threat to the people that are trying to provide them with support.
Yes, I mean, they shouldn't have to wear them. But Anna, do you think that they are necessary and it's actually a good idea now?
I mean, I really struggle with this because, of course, you want to keep people safe, but it is the most, as Kezia says, most outrageous figure. And I think it actually is, this figure is not just inside hospitals, it's hospital premises. And I just wonder if we're also talking about when members of staff are walking over to their cars or going to catch the bus or whatever it may be after a long and late shift outside who shouldn't be there. And you feel as if it's a bit like you shouldn't have to do this to be safe. We shouldn't have a society, for goodness sake, where 6,500 reports of rape and sexual assaults since 2019. That is a shocking statistic.
Yes, it is absolutely.
But if it keeps
shocking.
them safe, but it shouldn't be like this, should it?
Yeah, well, that is
really,
the...
something feels wrong about this.
Yeah, that is the point, that they shouldn't need to wear body cams. But staying with nurses, and the Mirror is covering a story which I think we broke some weeks ago. This is Sir Rod Stewart saying that nurses should get a rise now. Kezia.
Yes, and it's astonishing to come from Sir Rod Stewart, who for many years was a significant supporter of the Conservative Party. It's not the first time he's spoken out against the government of the day, but he's doing so with particular force this time by standing up for nurses who are obviously still striking in England and Wales over their pay and demanding a pay rise which meets the extent of the cost of the living crisis that they're all currently experiencing. And it's nice to see celebrity figures like Sir Rod Stewart making the case, because it puts the issue back on the front pages again after they've died off because of bigger stories, for example, like what's happening in Sudan or whatever else. So it's a nice boost, I think, to the morale of nurses who are just trying to get a decent pay for the incredibly important job that they do.
Of course, Rod made that pledge and carried through of funding some MRI scans when he'd phoned into our NHS phone-in. I mean, is it that the place of celebrities, do you think, Anna, to make comment like this?
Absolutely, why not? He's entitled to his views, and I'm sure you'd be delighted if he could phone in again and perhaps share his views on doctors and pay rises. But yeah, good on him. He's a national treasure. And of course, as Kezia says, he's a former Conservative who isn't particularly impressed with the Conservative government. And I'm sure he speaks for many millions of other people in that respect.
Kezia, finally, the London Marathon went off without a hitch. Extinction Rebellion activists gathered on the streets nearby but didn't disrupt.
Yes, and 49,000 people completed the London Marathon today, a really cracking number there. I think if I was doing it, I still might be out on the streets of London. So I'm full of awe for everybody who's completed it, no matter what time they came in or no matter what outrageous costume they were wearing whilst they were doing it. It's a phenomenal event in the calendar, and I'm so pleased it's managed to avoid the disruption and protest we've seen at so many other big sporting occasions in the past few days.
Yes, and Anna, it was Mo Farah's last professional marathon.
Is that, forgive me, but Gillian, is that right? Because the guy saw somewhere that he was going to do, is it the Manchester one? Anyway, God, isn't he just wonderful?
Last London marathon.
Last London, yeah, the last London one. He's just outstanding. What a role model he is for people. But I love all these marathons. I just think they're fabulous. And in fact, all those distances. And as Kezia says, people do them for all sorts of reasons. And so many people do it to raise money, and they dress up in bonkers costumes. God knows how they run all those miles dressed like that. And it's extraordinary and it's brilliant. I think you've got one in Edinburgh in May. Yes. Haven't you, Kezia? You've got the Edinburgh
I don't think Kezia's running in it, though.
They're brilliant.
Anna and Kezia, thank you both.
Thank
you both for taking us through the papers. We'll see you in the next hour. Thank you.